Let's see if I can look at that, of the radio and what the buttons are. And there's A, B, C, D, etc., 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 etc. And we're most interested in the joysticks. So that's going to be left, right, up, down, tilt, yaw left, right, tilt left, right, go forward, go backward, make the throttle more, make the throttle less. That's 4. But there's also the arm, disarm, the flight modes, and in general, anything you want. So I'm going to show you how to configure that for our particular drone to get it in the air. We need another piece of software from EdgeTX, which is EdgeTX Companion. Now, you can configure the radio from its front panel, but it's much more convenient to configure it with this piece of software called EdgeTX Companion. So let's get that. Get EdgeTX, and we want to get EdgeTX Companion, Windows 64-bit. So let's get that software and open it and install it. And we're going to run anyway. Oh, I need to give Windows the permission. Yes. Agree. Next. 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 All users. Install. Next. And finish. So we did that. Let's go back to our directions. So download, install EdgeTX Companion, and run it. So it's going to be somewhere. Companion. We don't need the Express LRS configurator. We do need Companion. I'm going to pause this video and restart it so that the file doesn't get too big. Okay, picking up again. So we are configuring the radio settings. To configure it, instead of using the front panel of the radio, we're going to do it through the computer with this program called EdgeTX Companion. And we're going to run that. Here it is. It says, welcome to EdgeTX 2.10.3. As a first step, please configure the internal radio settings by selecting your radio type, menu language, and build options. You may want to take this time to review the other available options in the display settings dialog. After saving your settings, we recommend you download the latest firmware for radio. We already did that. Please visit edgetex.org. We already did that. We don't want to show it again. We're done. Okay. So this is the program that will be used to configure the radio. Choose your radio model and settings. Name the profile to save the radio profile. So it's a brand new installation of EdgeTX. It's very important that we go to Settings, Radio Profile. Let's just go to Settings. We're going to call this profile, let's call it Fall 2024. And we don't have master fire, so we need to tell it we're using the Radio Master Pocket. We want Lua script enabled. I don't think we need any of this other stuff. Oh, splash screen. This is where you can do the splash. Well, let's not do that. Okay, so we're just configuring the radio. And default internal mode crossfire, which is the same thing as Express LRS. External module, we don't have one. Stick mode 2, rudder throttle elevator aileron. Uh-oh. Okay, I guess that's right. And the rest we're going to leave alone. Okay, so we've configured that. So now we want to connect the radio. So power on the radio.
Receiver still connected.
Okay, turn it off and on again. So power on the radio.
Hey Peter, welcome back. Disarmed. Stabilize mode.
Plug in. Select USB storage. Okay. And go back to configurator. Or sorry, companion. So now we want to download from the radio, read models and settings from radio. So we're going to read the settings. So these are all the models that I already have programmed in there. So let's create a new one. I don't want to duplicate. Let's create a new one. Okay, we're going to add models. So I'll change that later. We're not going to duplicate. We're going to add a new model and follow the wizard. Name it. We want the ATR option, and then we'll go through the tabs. So I'm going to right click, add model. We're going to call this Fall 24 tutorial. It's going to be a multi-rotor. Next, we're going to leave these to default. Next, we're not going to have any of these options. Next, okay, understand, finish. Fall 24 tutorial. I don't know how many. Tutorial. Okay. Oops, I didn't want to simulate it. Okay. One second, I'm going to close the windows. All right, so the neighbors don't hear. So this is our model, and these are all the different ways you can configure it. So obviously to do this on the front panel of the radio itself is going to be tedious compared to doing it with the computer and a mouse and a screen. So what do we need to do to configure it? Well, a lot, but we don't really care about all those options. So I'm going to walk you through the ones we care about, but in general, you can do all sorts of stuff. Each of those buttons can do whatever you want. So if you want to do, drop a parachute off your drone, you can do that with one of the buttons. If you want to have the drone, create some LED light that it turns on the drone, you can press one of those buttons. So it's up to you what you want to do. We're just going to do the basics here, which is fly, arm, and flight modes. So those are the things we want. So I think what I can do is move this over, zoom out a little bit. And so we can see. So we're going to be doing this tutorial model. And the setup we're going to leave alone for now, except we do need the internal radio on. Okay, it's hard to see it, but we want the internal radio on. Otherwise, you're not going to be doing anything. We don't have an external radio. We don't want to use the trainer port. So that's the setup. Scroll down, choose internal RF crossfire mode. Okay, heli, ignore. Flight modes, ignore. This is not flight modes of the drone. This is the radio itself can have different quote-unquote flight modes so that the radio behaves differently. We're not doing any fancy stuff. The radio is always going to behave the same, so we're not going to adjust that. Inputs, we're going to leave as the default for now. And now you notice aileron, elevator, throttle, rudder. That's for a plane. So aileron is tilt for a drone. Elevator is tilt forward and backward for a drone. Throttle is obviously same for a drone as a plane. Rudder is yaw for a drone. Mixes. So channel 1, 2, 3, 4, we'll leave those alone because that means when you move the stick, it's going to send it out You can send the input out on channel 1 at 100%. But we need more than that. We need to be able to arm and disarm it and other things. So we're going to add channel 5 to be switch A. Switch A. It's an input. And then the output will be 100%. Okay, so that's channel 5. Channel 6, we'll make it switch B. Okay, channel 7, we'll make it switch C. Channel 8, we'll make it switch D. And let's look at what those switches are. So we can go back to the picture of the kind of radio, which is somewhere on the instructions here. Here's a picture. Come on. Seriously? What did I do wrong? Oh, I just want the website. Okay. So we have switch A is an on-off switch. You can't tell whether it's in or out very easily, so I don't like it. Switch B is a 3-position switch. Switch C is a 3-position switch. Switch D again is an on-off switch, but you can't tell whether it's on or off. I don't like it. And then other switches, switch 1 pot, switch 1 motor. So we only need 2 of them, even though we're putting 4 in. Okay, now, so we don't need that anymore. We don't need that anymore. We don't need the instructions anymore, but we do need instructions for this particular configuration file. Okay, so we were here on these switches. Now, channel 7 we're going to be using for the arm and disarm. And for reasons that are reasons, we're going to make that -100. And the reason is I want it when I push the switch forward, it arms, and when I pull the switch back, it disarms. And so we have to make the output -100% for that channel. It's a 3-position switch, so all the way forward is armed, all the way back is disarmed. In the middle is nothing. So be advised, the middle switch doesn't change the status of the drum. Okay. All right, so that's that tab. Outputs we'll leave alone. It's just passing through. Curves, we're going to leave them alone. Logical switches, we're going to leave them alone. Like I said, there's all sorts of things you can do. Special functions. This is something we do want. So special function 1, switch C up. Switch C up. And make sure there's no exclamation point in front of it. So when switch C goes up, what are we going to do? The radio is going to do any of these things. And we're going to tell it to play this track. And the track that it's going to play is one of those sound files called armed. Oops. Okay, so that's switch C up. So then switch C down. We're going to play a track. And disarmed. Now that, oh shoot. Okay, I'm assuming that's right. We'll find out, because that has to be the file name of the file. So I hope that's correct. We can check it maybe later. Okay, now we want to do the flight modes, which is going to be switch B. So switch B up. We're going to play a track. And the flight mode is going to be return to home, RTH. Switch B neutral. Play a track. it's going to be loiter. Switch B down, play a track. It's going to be stab mo, which is called stabilize. Now, I remember what we can do to check the name of these files, in particular armed to disarmed. We have a backup of the SD card on our computer. So let's check those file names probably didn't change. So let's check this. So here's a bunch of different tracks that it can play, and let's go to disarm.
Disarmed.
Okay, so that's correct, disarm. And if we do arm, let's do arm. Armed.
Armed.
So we can do stab mo.
Stabilize mode.
Right, and then we can do RTH.
Return to home.
Okay, so the file names are correct in the Configurator Special Functions tab. What's next? Telemetry, leave alone. Custom screens, leave alone. Enabled features, leave for default. Telemetry, custom screens, enabled features, default. Now, there's one more thing we want to do in the Setup tab, which is switch warnings. So when you first turn on the drone, when you first turn on the radio, it's going to say warning, switch warning, switch warning, switch warning if the switches aren't the way this configurator wants it to be. And the only one we care about is ARM, which is switch C. And the reason is for safety, when you turn the radio on, you don't want to immediately arm the drone. So if you turn the radio on and the ARM switch is in the ARM position, the radio is going to complain, switch warning. That's what we want. So in order to do that, we have switch warning, SC, and down apparently is what we need because of this minus 100% thing. All right. So it's an issue of the sign, whether it's sign, up or down, disarm or disarm. And that's something you need to check very carefully, obviously. It's very easy to check, which is going to be even easier the further we go along. Okay, so we're done with the configuration, but it's only existing in the buffer on the computer. So we want to send this to the radio. So we use this download to radio button, write model settings to radio. Do you want to continue? You're about to overwrite all models on the radio. Yes. Now they're written to the radio. Great. Okay. And we're done. But for good practice, we want to save the config file to a local file. So we can go File, Save As, document1.etx. Do you really want to call it document1? If you do, people are going to stop talking when you walk in the room because what does document1 mean? So I would call it radio config, and then you can give it whatever name you want. Name it after your girlfriend or your boyfriend or whatever, but I usually name it by the date, 28 August 2024, and the time, because later today we might have another config file, .etx. And now I have a backup of that file, and we can close the configurator, and we have successfully configured the radio. Now, just because the radio says something doesn't mean it's true. In other words, let me disconnect the radio now. Okay.
Disarmed. Stabilize mode.
So the radio, I'm going to turn it off, and I'm going to turn it on, and the drone is off.
Hey, Peter,
So
welcome
it's just the
back.
radio that's on.
Switch warning.
So give me a switch warning because it's in the armed position. So I'm going to change it to disarmed,
Stabilize mode.
and now it is willing to boot up. So that's a safety feature. Now, let's say I move it to the armed position. I move switch C.
Armed.
It says armed. It's not armed because the drone is off. So the radio is just telling you what the switch position is. It's not actually arming the drone. So
Disarmed.
Keep in mind, the radio is just telling you what the switch position is. It's useful when you're flying, but if it's not connected to the drone properly, the drone isn't doing what the radio says it wants it to do. So that's up to you as the pilot to configure it. So that's our next step.